we have what's known as a debt-based economy. And what that is a long way of saying is that you fundamentally, for the system to currently continue to work, we have to create more money. Now, we call it different things. We call it inflation, we call it quantitative easing, there's many names. But what it comes down to is we need more money than we earn. So we earn money by doing work, adding value to the economy. And sometimes some of that money is given to governments to spend in the form of taxes or in the form of just donations in some countries, or in other fees and services. When you take a flight, you may be charged a fee for that, and some of that goes towards earnings for the government to spend on roads, on hospitals, on whatever it is. The problem is the amount that we earn is generally less than the government spends, so it doesn't balance its books. It's spending more than it's earning. And as you can imagine, if you were spending more than you were earning, you would end up building up more and more and more and more debt. So how do we recover that? The way they recover it is governments have this special superpower to be able to create their own money. So whatever the gap is, they just print more money to cover that gap. And that's what we call inflation. The problem with that is if you print more money to give yourself more money, you haven't actually increased the amount of work being done in the system. People aren't working harder. So what you're actually doing is devaluing or reducing the value of all money in the system, but giving yourself some of that value. It's a cheat code. It's a way of solving your problem, but the downside is everybody else suffers because they effectively reduce the value of every single dollar note or pound note or euro note that all the other people who aren't benefiting from that money, printed money, own. So that's how all systems work today. Now, the only way to solve that is to balance the books. Would be for one way or another, governments to charge more in taxes, but if they charge too much, people will start leaving, or they'll start not being able to survive because the tax will be so high, it'll be difficult to live. Or for governments to spend less money. But the problem with that is if someone actually tries to spend less money, or government comes along and says they're going to spend less money, unfortunately, most people won't vote them into power, or they will kick them out of power because another government, another party will promise to spend more money. So it's pretty much structural. We cannot afford to tax people 60, 70, 80%, which is the amount that we'd need to do. No government can afford to do that. People won't be able to survive. But at the same time, even if you have an honest government who wants to try and cut costs, unfortunately, most societies are not willing to accept that. So you end up in a situation where they have to take the money still, but in this sort of secret way or less clear way. And the less clear way is to print money and give it to themselves. The money that is in the existing traditional system, the vast majority of it isn't physical. We think about pound notes and coins and dollar notes and so on. But most money exists on some computer somewhere. A bank will have balances for users. Whenever you buy something, you buy with your credit card or with your debit card, or you go to your bank, PayPal or whatever. But all of these things are computer systems, and the money is just data in a database. Money held on a computer. The central bank has something similar. And what they do is when they want more money, they will just it's like going into your Excel spreadsheet and you have your name, say your name is John, and you say, and the value next to it is £10,000, but you want to give yourself £20,000. You just go into the cell that says 10,000, you modify the number from 10,000 to 20,000, and all of a sudden you have 20,000. That's a superpower, to be able to go into your bank account and just imagine you could go into the bank account and just modify the number. Well, the central bank has that power, but they are the only people within the country who has that power. So they have this sort of super user access where they can change the amount of money they own. And that's all it takes. It's basically they go into a spreadsheet effectively and say, I'm giving myself more money. there is a hierarchy. So you have the central bank. So in the US, it's the Fed, the Federal Reserve. But then you have a number of commercial banks, the banks that you go in and open up a bank account with. And then you have the population, the people who use the banks. You can't have a bank account with the central bank. You have to have it with a normal bank. And then the normal banks have an account with the central bank. So the central bank can print money, i.e. it can go into its Excel spreadsheet and increase its balance. It can then go off and transfer some of the money it's just created to the various commercial banks, the high street retail banks, for example. They are also able to take the money that the bank sent to them and do a similar thing where they can increase the amount that they have. If they were given $1 million, they can increase it to 5 million. But the central bank generally requires them to limit how much they increase. So they can only increase the amount, a certain amount above what the central bank gave them. The central bank has no limits, but they have a limit to maybe they can print for themselves, for their use, let's say, for example, 5 times as much as the central bank gave them. And then with that money that they have also created, plus the money that was given to them by the central bank, which was also created, they can lend that out to people in the streets for mortgages or for whatever other purpose. They can give it to companies or people who need it for a loan for a car, a loan for a sofa, a loan for a mortgage for a house, a loan to start up a business or whatever. And that's how the money goes into the economy and then starts paying people's salaries and so on. With a central bank digital currency, you cut out the commercial banks. So effectively, instead of having a bank account with a high street retail bank, you effectively have a bank account directly with the central bank, and you no longer need to have these intermediaries, these middlemen. Retail banks will all have a bank account with the central bank. Now, there are a number of challenges with that because this system already is, as you can see, it's built on money printing. Inflation is a form of taking value, but in a less clear way. There's lots of problems with the system. But at least there's a level of separation between you as a user and the central bank. And so even though your bank is aware of what you're doing and your transactions and so on, which you may or may not be comfortable with, but that's a choice you can choose between banks. The central bank is only aware of what their customers, the high street banks, are doing as a whole. Now, with central bank digital currencies, if you cut out the banks in the middle, the retail banks, every single person will have an account with just one bank, the central bank. And the central bank will now know what everybody's doing everywhere. Whether you're buying a cigarette or whether you're buying a drink in a pub, whether you're donating money to a political party that the government might not agree with, whatever you're doing. And that has a number of concerns or challenges with individual freedom, individual privacy, etc. Bitcoin is a digital currency. It uses something called a blockchain. These are all buzzwords. And we could try to explain what each one of these is, but if I think of a simpler way to describe it, it's a money that requires effort to make. And the effort is in the form of the usage of energy, electricity, and computer processing power. So you have to spend electricity and you have to spend computing power to create a Bitcoin. So if I wanted to print 10 Bitcoin, I cannot just do that. I have to spend a certain amount of energy to create the Bitcoin. And this seems like a slight detail, or some people think this is a bug in the way Bitcoin works, but this is actually one of the core features, because it means that every Bitcoin created, someone spent time and money to create it. Mathematically, we know with certainty that Bitcoin was created and it costs money and time. And generally, any good, any service, if over time, the amount that you can charge for a service or good is the minimum amount has to be higher than the amount it costs you to produce. So over time, you'll see prices go down for things. If it's a chair, if it's a plane flight, if it's a car, whatever it is. But it will never go below the amount it costs to produce. So the cost to produce acts like a floor on the price. It prevents it going to zero. Now, what we've seen with money that's produced by central banks, well, you can imagine if I go into a computer cell and just change the price, it cost me no money. There was no cost to produce that money. Therefore, because it costs no to produce, the destiny of that price is to tend down towards zero, i.e. the value of that money over time is likely to tend towards zero. But with Bitcoin, because there was always a cost to produce, there's always a cost to make Bitcoin, that gives us confidence that this will not tend to zero in price, because there is it costs the people who produce it money. They will always want to charge more than the cost, and that acts like a floor on the price. And that is there are many other properties of Bitcoin that make it incredible, but that for me is one of the most important, that it is money which is backed by electricity. And the fact that it's backed by electricity makes it fundamentally have value. The only other thing I will point out without getting to the technical details is that Bitcoin has a fixed supply. And this is something that many people talk about. On my chest, I talk about 21 million. There can never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Again, this speaks to one of the core concerns with the existing system. The central bank can at any point add to the number of units of the currency in the system, and there is no limit to how much they can add. With Bitcoin, for various interesting computing reasons, is limited to 21 million. And that means it's not possible for anyone, even the creator of Bitcoin, which you could consider equivalent to the central bank, to add more to it. So inflation beyond 21 million is all but impossible. Bitcoin is a lifelong coiling. Bitcoin is freedom. Bitcoin is ikigai. Ikigai is this Japanese concept, and it means your reason for being. And by working in the Bitcoin space, I found my ikigai. And your ikigai is four things. It's the thing that you're good at. And at the beginning, I wasn't good at it, but I've been in the industry for over a decade now. So I'm starting to get reasonably good at doing what I do. It's the thing that you enjoy doing, and I'm incredibly passionate about this, and I really enjoy being in this space. It's the thing that can generate income, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to earn a living from working in this space. And finally, to get full ikigai, it has to be the thing that makes the world a better place. And working on a money that is meritocratic, i.e. completely fair, doesn't matter where you are in the world, anyone has equal access to it. This completely fair finance, this meritocratic money, that I cannot think of anything that's more impactful to billions of lives around the world. So it hits all 4 points to be ikigai, and for me, that's why I'm devoting my life to Bitcoin.
Fantastic.
Thank you. No worries. Pleasure.
Thank you very much.